I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with Guy Goldstein, expert on all things, and Golan Ramraz, expert on some things.
Good enough.
And he'll say he's an expert in everything.
Look, the fact that I happen to be right most of the time might just be by chance.
Would you rather be happy or would you rather be right?
Well, I'm happy being right.
You know, it's funny is the first time I ever heard that expression, it was from Chuck Lurie, and it had such a profound impact on me, even though the source of it was from somebody that I knew was unhappy. It was, it's amazing who, you know, it's always, it's the message. It's not the messenger. You know, it's a really big thing I've learned in life, but welcome to the Daily Cheat Sheet. There's a lot going on in the news. First thing I really want to get to, though, is Republicans unified for the most part today to get this SAVE Act passed, amazingly, 216 to 215. But of course, you have Thomas Massey being Thomas Massey from Kentucky. And somebody will have to explain to me why Kentucky is one of the weirdest states as far as what public officials come out from it. I mean, think about it. You have Mitch McConnell, a senator, Rand Paul, a senator, and Thomas Massey, a congressman. Now, just take those two senators, go on. They're like total opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're both on the spectrum of some sort. And then you have Massie, who looks like a chia head, and he's the one person that voted no. And he hates Trump. He hates the Republican Party. Trump is trying to primary him. He was vicious against Pam Bondi today in regards to the Epstein files, but good for Republicans. This is a win. This should be the messaging today, should be a win today for Mike Johnson for getting the vote of 216 votes to 215. That is a miracle, Golan.
It truly is. And, you know, as things get tighter and tighter, and there's more of a chance of, if even one or two or three of these people defect as they did in this vote, we're getting closer to the point where that could be the whole ball game. And so the fact that he was able to pull this off truly is a miracle. This is politicking at the pro level.
But Guy, the bigger point is this is like one of those weird things. So everybody thinks Kentucky is red, and in some ways it is. It's wonky red, but at the same time they have a crazy governor who's a Democrat, and it's such a bizarre state. I don't really understand it, but at the same time, forget about that. It's amazing they got the SAVE Act passed. And this is something Republicans should be messaging today. But we'll get to more messaging that they should be doing later with the jobs numbers. But these are instant. This is a monumental type thing that they got this passed. And for people not familiar, this is the requirement for voter ID, and which black people agree with, white people agree with, everybody agrees with, except
everybody that has papers.
Everybody that's legal pretty much agrees with this guy.
Absolutely. And look, I come from a country where voter ID has always been necessary. Australia's had compulsory voting for as long as I've been voting. That means every citizen is required by law to vote. There are roles, and you have to show up and show your ID that you're the name that's associated with that role. Okay. And then you go in and you cast your vote. And if you don't vote, you get fined. So you have to vote, and you have to vote in your district, and you have to prove that you are who you are. And
okay,
this
so I'm going to just before you go on,
Australians were literate.
Before you go on, I agree with half of that, and then I understand why Australia is like Australia is. I don't want everybody in America voting. Okay, I want everybody in America to have to show ID to vote, but I don't think everybody in America should be voting. Okay, I mean let's be honest.
And I agree with you, and I think not voting is a kind of vote.
Let me rephrase what I said. I don't want them anywhere near a voting box. I don't even want to give them the opportunity to get into the voting, to get into the vestibule or whatever it is, Guy, to have that vote. Okay, some people should be.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah,
I agree with you entirely, Judah, and I think that. First of all, my personal opinion is you should have to have a certain understanding of civics and and current political circumstance to vote. It shouldn't just be a popularity contest, which I think you sent me an article earlier today about a sheriff that needed to get a civics lesson.
Brilliant. Please talk about that story.
Oh, yeah. Amazing.
The short version of it, the sheriff was the particular county was being interviewed by one of the senators in the state. And she asked him a simple question: which branch of government do you belong to? And he couldn't answer it. First, he said the county, then the Constitution. Then when given a third chance, he went back to the county. And her response was to say, well, that wasn't the question I expected to get stuck on.
It's even worse. She asked him how many branches of government are there, and he did not know the answer to that. And then she listed the branches of government. I'm assuming it's a she because you're saying it's a she.
No, she said, for the sake of argument, let's assume there are 3 branches of government.
Yeah. And she listed the 3, and she said, which one do you belong to? And he got it wrong.
He went with judicial, whereas
Yes.
he is actually under the executive, for anyone playing along at home.
He answered quite a number of questions incorrectly. So just to let everyone know who we're talking about, this is the Mecklenburg County Sheriff. His name's Gary McFadden. And this thing went viral, as it probably should have. But he was in a hearing on crime in Charlotte, and he was answering all sorts of questions. I'm just reading the article is making me laugh. But basically, he couldn't answer questions about what branch of government his position falls under. He kept saying Mecklenburg County, which is not, for those of you who don't know, no shame, you're not the sheriff who works there, not a branch of government. He couldn't answer a follow-up question about what the 3 branches of government are, because obviously he thought the county I live in is one of them. And then after that, he also, when he was told what the 3 branches of government are, he guessed which one his office fell under, and he got that wrong as well. And now everyone's asking him to resign. So pretty good day for that guy.
And this was in regards to ICE, right?
It was a hearing on crime, and he was answering questions specifically about ICE. And he was trying to deflect blame for not cooperating. And then that question came up. That wasn't the gotcha part of the question. That was supposed to be just laying the groundwork to get to the real question. And they never even got a chance to get there.
And Guy, this is why people should not be voting. I mean, not everybody should be voting because sheriffs are elected officials. I'm guessing somebody in this county voted. Listen, obviously, let's be honest. I'm sure there's many white sheriffs that might have gotten this answer wrong, but he looks like the worst DEI hire of all time.
I could assume that a vast proportion of Americans would not know the answer to that question because we stopped teaching it in schools decades ago. And so I think on the left, people don't even agree with the concept. On the right, people don't really know the theory. And this touches on the broader question that we were talking about, which is who should vote? You should have to know what you're voting on in order to vote, even if it's a basic thing. Like if you're voting for the executive branch, you should be able to know that it's the executive branch as opposed to the legislative, right? If you don't know what you're doing and it's just, I'm going in and I'm going to pick the name that I heard the most on TV, or I'm going to do the thing that I was battered by the people around me to do, that's not democracy. That's just sheep following wolves.
And I'll go a full step further. I have an entire theory. This is something I've felt for a very long time. I think there are certain things you have to qualify to do. And this is an unpopular opinion, maybe among certain people. I think you should have to qualify before you're allowed to be a parent, like you do to get a license for a car, right? Anything like that. I think anything that has actual consequences when your decision is made. And to me, I have a theory of voting called the informed consent theory of voting, which is basically, if you don't know what you're talking about, you don't get to vote. And it's not a right. You're basically making a statement. Knowledge is a prerequisite.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a statement that I know what these politicians' policies are. I know what the consequences of those policies will be. And now I will make a decision based on the learnedness of it. So I think it should be like a test. They say, all right, I want to vote for sheriff. All right, here's a form. It could be multiple choice even. Okay, you don't have to write essays. Which of these policies belong to which guy? You don't know? I'm so sorry. Come back next time. Maybe next year.
I think it's extremely difficult. I don't disagree necessarily with what you're saying. Final point on this, Guy.
I agree, Gordon. I think I think the rule in society in general is any time that you're taking on a privilege which can put other people's lives at risk, driving a car, owning a gun, you have to pass a basic series of qualifications in order to do it. This doesn't mean are you the sort of person that the bureaucrat likes. It shouldn't be a subjective process, but there are basic skills you should have. And that is the same for parenting, because you're taking the future children that you want to have, you're taking their lives into your hands. And it applies for voting, because you're taking the lives of the entire society you're into your hands.
Yeah.
Well said. And I just want to move on a little bit because there's a lot in the news, and Pam Bondi was getting grilled on the Hill about the Epstein stuff go on. And listen, I really don't think there's not too much to talk about this other than Trump has been exonerated 100%. I mean, he is the whistleblower, which I find one of the whistleblowers, which I find to be one of the most ironic things in the world. But the reason I this drives me crazy is because, as she pointed out, or as other people have pointed out, the Democrats did nothing. The left did nothing about Epstein for God knows how many years go on. For God knows how many years. And again, it's the Trump boomerang effect. Everybody that's been pretty much listed are leftists and European governments that we hope fail. And the final data dump is probably going to be people that we do business with in the Middle East. I don't think it's, and I'm not referring to Israel. I'm referring to the Saudis or wherever it is that's on that list. Just speculating, and that's a rumor.
Fair enough. But what's not a rumor is that we know firsthand that the Democrats have had all of this stuff for a really long time and have just been sitting on it until the moment that Trump got into office. They were just waiting because they knew they were going to weaponize the files, and they were going to make sure that whether it's the mainstream media, whether it's social media, whether it's the podcast people that are working in lockstep with them, they knew that it would be very easy to weaponize all of this by framing it with a certain narrative and aiming it at whoever was in office, especially if that person was Trump. Because we've all seen that one photograph of them together, so he must be guilty, and everything can point towards that.
I
So
actually have a different take on the Epstein files.
the thing is, that's not my take on the Epstein files. Because as you and everybody else who listens to this podcast knows, I don't give a crap about hearing about the Epstein files. As I've said 1,000 times, if there's someone that's guilty, go get them. I don't need to hear about it. I certainly don't need little leaks that feel like reality shows. But what I'm saying is not even about the Epstein files. Whatever it happens to be, in this case, it happens to be the Epstein files. But the Democrats could have done something if they really cared, and instead sat on this in order to use it as a weapon. That is what we do know.
But the Democrats did the right thing, not doing anything with it. If there was something there that was prosecutable, they should have prosecuted it. And if when Trump came back for 47, there was something prosecutable, he should have seen to it that it was prosecuted. All of this public leaking, all of the fact that 3.5 million random allegations by unknown people, some of whom knew things, some of whom didn't, that every crazy person on the internet is now cherry picking sentences from in order to create new conspiracy theories that will flood our entire political sphere for the next decade.
Decade?
Decade.
Yeah,
I'm being
50 years.
optimistic that the society will collapse before then. But the fact is, releasing it was a mistake, and it was an own goal that was brought about by idiots like the Groypers, who decided that rather than say, well, what we want is for action to be taken against actionable people, we have to release the Epstein file. Who listens to people like Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, these morons that want to destroy the Republican Party? Those were the people who were making a big noise on the internet to get it released. Normal people just wanted to see bad people thrown in prison. The people that wanted to see the noise, see the trash, get the gossip, were these nobodies who shouldn't have a platform, who shouldn't have a voice in the Republican Party, who should be out on their asses like the nobodies they deserve to be.
I don't disagree with you on those people, right? That those people were obviously deliberately anything for clicks and views. They're hucksters and hustlers and grifters. So I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that, yes, the Democrats sat on it for a long time, and you could say, in theory, they were doing the right thing by not pursuing anything. The problem is that the moment Donald Trump got into office, those very same Democrats, including the people who had been in charge in the previous administration, started loudly and consistently screaming for an Epstein dump from that moment on. Not because they suddenly discovered a moral compass that was like, we should have done it all along. It was not because they cared about the victims, not because they did anything. They wanted a weapon, and they saw that this was the moment to care. This was the moment to say something. So it wasn't they were sitting on it because they had a principled view of, hey, it's right not to put it out there. It's wait, hold. It's like Braveheart, hold, right? And then on my signal, unleash hell. That's what they did. They didn't hold because they had morals, held because they had a weapon.
But the president knows how to ignore the Democrats when they try to make a lot of noise and drama about nothing. The problem here was that there was this voice coming from the conspiracy theorists on the far right, who wanted and have openly said that they wanted to see the president fail. that they want to see the GOP come to get torn down and replaced, right? These are not people who hide the ball. And those were the people that turned this into an issue. Letting those people have this win is going to have consequences that have no benefit to anyone, not the victims, not society, not the Republican Party, not the nobody wins from this.
I 50% agree with you, but I 50% think you're missing something, which is those people, because they are grifters, didn't start calling for that stuff until it became something that was going to get them clicks and views. And how did it become clicks and views? It's because everyone on the weaponized left decided to start calling for this, and that led to podcasters who were also on the left, or Bernie Bros or whatever, calling for it, and it led to the mainstream media suddenly calling for it. And by the time it became a deluge, then those guys, all the Andrew Tates and the other grifters, were like, we're going to hop on this bandwagon. Then they did, and then it just became this cacophony of sound from all directions. But they did it because of that.
Let's not forget a major mistake, and this was Pam Bondi handing out the binders to the influencers. I hate
100%.
using that word. Let's not forget the messaging that's been atrocious on this issue. And to Guy's point that he brought up, this will create a tear that will last for 50 years in the breakdown of our judicial system with people's lack of trust. There is no recovering right now. You look at the UK, and I said I'm happy about that, but this could potentially break the monarchy, but this could also cause even further damage to I don't even know how you could further damage our judicial system. But this is going to cause ripple. People that are looking at this are looking at total chaos and destruction and of our country, and pure chaos. So if George Soros had anything to do with this, wink, wink, of
Russia, China, Iran.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Job well done. But I want to get back to something with ICE. You have Swalwell, who's just the biggest slime bag, and he looks dirty. I mean, talk about a guy that looks like he needs a shower whenever you see him, is Eric Swalwell. I mean, he really does. I mean, forget about the 5 o'clock shadow, or the semi-growth. He looks like he just looks dirty. Like
he
if
looks
I
like
were
a
with him,
semi-growth.
I would shower after touching his hand. And he said to ICE today, acting ICE Director Todd Lyons refused to resign under pressure from Swalwell, who offered him the ultimatum to do so or side with the killers. This is disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting. And this is, again, something messaging that Republicans should be putting out again today, is something with Swalwell and showing all the people and all the lives that have been saved. You're talking about, again, hundreds of thousands of lives that are saved because of ICE. And the fact that I'm not seeing this messaging every day is a failure of communication from this administration.
The messaging for this, the messaging on this is simple. Yes, the acting director of ICE made the decision to stand with the heroes who protect our society. The acting director of ICE made the decision to stand with the people who risk their lives to protect women, children, and all of the victims inside the illegal alien community as well, who are the victims of trafficking and of all of the illegal actions taken by the bad hombres, as we call them on this show. That was the decision, and it was the right decision. It's the decision a good leader makes when his troops are under fire. And Swalwell turned out it was the villain in this story, and the fact that he thinks that he's the hero for that clip, I mean, that alone is a reason to boot him out of the team.
Yeah, Golan, it's really frightening what he said. He said, "You are what I would call otherwise employable." This is the same guy that got honeypotted by a Chinese spy. I think most people would agree this is not the only job you can get. But since you have been on this job, women have been dragged by their hair through the streets. A 6-year-old child battling stage 4 cancer has been deported. And it turns out that he was a U.S. citizen, Swalwell claimed. Will you stand with the kids who you're supposed to protect, or will you side with killers bringing terror to our streets? Mr. Lyons, will you resign from ICE? Obviously, this is all so he could, show clips because he's running for the governor of California. So I mean, this is just insane. It's nuts. And this is what we have to deal with because he's an elected official. Go on.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're absolutely right. Of all the people in the world to call out bad behavior, to call out hypocrisy, to call out all of these things, this is the same guy, as you mentioned, who was honeypotted by a Chinese agent, who, by the way, how is he still in office? I don't even understand how that's possible. By the way, speaking of, not to go back, I'm making connective tissue here. When right after Biden left office, Jamie Raskin was the first one calling for, hey, you got to release the Epstein files, like all of a sudden, right? And then it was Adam Schiff, third guy, Eric Swalwell. It's always Eric Swalwell opening his big, disgusting mouth. But here, he did a thing that to me it reminds me, I was just talking to someone today about the old adage of disproving a negative. It's like, okay, prove you don't beat your wife. There's no way to win this argument, because if you don't beat your wife, you're like, no, I don't beat my wife. That's for test too much. What the Eric Swalwell theater here is him doing basically moral blackmail, dressed up as asking questions or oversight. When he says resign or you side with the killers, basically it's just intimidation. He's not actually asking for someone to make a decision. I'm giving you two binary options. One option is resign. The other one is you love killers and you think that everything that they're doing, and I'm going to exaggerate and lie about all of this. If you don't resign, you think all of that stuff is good. And it's what you point out. He is trying to get clicks and views. He's trying to get that one viral clip that will help him push over the line so he can, soundbite his way into a higher office. It's the same thing he's done a number of times. He's constantly trying to do that moral blackmail via algorithm. It's disgusting. He's a disgusting person, and I think we should just stop listening to him altogether.
I agree with you 100%, and it's extremely well said. And he's going with the fine people hoax, right? Because the Lion's response was that child you're showing right there. The men and women of ICE took care of him when his father abandoned him and ran from law enforcement. Lion said, referencing the case of Adrian Arias of Ecuadorian national,
who we talked about at length on the show.
Right. But it's important to note that he was lying with who he's talking about. So he's not even talking, Guy, about reality. He's literally lying. I know a House member lying as they're questioning somebody. It's just the craziest thing in the world.
And I think it's more than lying, because he's actually relying on two specific things here in order to manipulate public opinion. The first is he's relying on ignorance. He's relying on the fact that he can say a 6-year-old, and how many people know who is being spoken about. The second is that even a well-prepared person who's being interviewed by the committee, right? Even when Lyons knew the case he was talking about and was able to give a good and direct answer, he was relying on the fact that the internet clips. The question would be put out without the answer, right, so that the guilt was implied without the proof of innocence. And the level of deceptiveness in that particular framing of the question should be criminal when you're a member of Congress interviewing a member of the executive.
I agree with you 100%. You should be censored. You should this is an absolute disgrace. I mean, it's more than a disgrace. It is dangerous for members of ICE. It is dangerous for members of all law enforcement across the United States of America. This isn't just, we have to get, we have to get out of this. I mean, you brought up with the Epstein stuff. This is a massive thing that we're facing as a society, Golan. What Guy is bringing up, we are being flooded and inundated with sheer lies that is going to destroy what's left of our society that Trump has really saved. I mean, Trump, it was on the world. It was on the world according to Ben Stein last night. We were talking about this, and Ben was talking about the fact that Trump has literally saved America. Trump has literally come in and saved America, but there are so many
America.
Yeah, and the world, and there are so many outside forces go on that are trying. So, Epstein, you got ICE, and then now there's this assault, this all-out brutal assault on Christianity and Judaism to break it apart and to tear it apart by I don't even want to call them armchair, theologians, by demented people that think they are somehow theologians because they read a book or met one priest that agreed with what they said, Tucker Carlson. And Golan, we are in for some very dangerous times ahead.
I agree, and I think that you're actually giving them too much credit, because I don't believe most of those people believe they are theologians.
But no. I was using that as a joke. I was being sarcastic. No, they're not theologians.
No, I know they're not, but I don't even think they believe what they're saying. These are grifters, as you know, I use that word a lot lately because there are just so damn many of them. But I think that what's happening is they are finding whatever popular thing, you know, it's been happening almost on a daily basis. You see someone who has 5,000 followers, and then they latch on to the thing that's popular at the moment to hate on, and suddenly they have 55,000 followers by the next day, and they realize, oh, I'll just keep doubling down here because all I really care about is clicks and views and likes and popularity and money. And so morality is not one of the things I just listed. Right now, we have many people lying. Like we were, okay, so Swalwell, for instance, he in this hearing, he was lying, and he lied in ways that are verifiably false. So right now there's not a lot of things that we can do to remedy that, but we can, let's say, within the House, if we're using legal means, we can do a formal censure. We can have something written into the record. We can use electoral pressure to get him to whatever it is, all these different things, but they're not really punishments ultimately. It's something minor. When we're talking about the pod sphere, when we're talking about what's going on online, what's going on in media, what's going on in social media, there's no punishment whatsoever. There's nothing to do at all. All you can do is expose, and nobody cares about exposure. Tucker's lied about things that are also verifiably false, things that evidence is in your face about, and it doesn't matter. He just keeps going, keeps doubling down on the lie, and half the people, Guy mentioned weaponizing ignorance. And he's doing that on a regular basis because if you say the lie enough times, it becomes truth. All Chucker does is repeat that lie. And all those people who are on that side of the equation are doing the exact same thing. There is no way to punish them.
It's so funny that you bring that up. As Guy, there was this scumbag Steve Bannon who's in the Epstein files for trying to basically rehabilitate and his career. We have absolute proof of this in the so part of me is glad some of this came out. I got to be honest, but on the whole, I see the destruction that it will cause. So for me to be happy about Bannon, was it worth it? Probably not. We already knew about Prince Andrew. He was already canceled and kicked out of but somebody was like saying to me, if this is true about Bannon, why is he still in the air? Like trying to defend Bannon, and I was like,
oh, they were saying
first
that
of all,
to
he's on
try
the
to
internet.
defend him?
Yeah, they were saying that to try to defend them. And then people are like sending the files to this person. And I said, he's on the air because of the internet and because of like people like you who refuse to believe the reality I'm saying. Okay, like prove it.
I mean, it also has to do with the fact that society has no real standards anymore. I mean, I seem to recall there was a video that went around of Andrew Tate smacking around a 15-year-old that he was trafficking and possibly also dating at the time, despite the fact that would be a statutory crime in most countries. And he's still out there and he's still being a thing and he's still this inspiration to young men who are being, I don't even know how to describe how disappointed I am in young men as a class for following him and idolizing him. I think the other thing is, one of the things that we now no longer understand in society is just because you hear voices in your head, it doesn't make you a prophet, right? Once upon a time when people would say crazy things because they said, I heard it in a dream, Candace, they would say, okay, well, we have institutions for people like you. And now we have podcasts for people like you, and you can be number one, right? Like, that's the madness.
No, you're completely right. We have absolutely zero guardrails for this stuff. And that's what I'm talking about. We're really facing an existential crisis that I do not think people realize to what levels they go to. And the dude's not here today, and I know he would probably disagree, and I respect his opinion 100% about, he's a fan of releasing the Epstein files, and I've been wishy-washy on it. So I get that people have their opinions on it. I do. I get that people want these things released. Some people don't want these things released, but think about the long-term. Nobody ever thinks about the long-term consequences. It's like the vax, right? God, heaven to Betsy, none of us knows what the long-term consequences are from people being forced to get vaccinated. And, shame on the government for forcing that on people. I want to move on, guys, a little bit, if you don't mind. Bibi Netanyahu was at the White House today. Supposedly, they're still negotiating with Iran, who, please, there are thousands of images coming out of Iran of Trump hanging from a noose, the fake caskets of American soldiers that Iran will have killed, and all this stuff, and all the saber rattling. And, we're sending out another ship with, I believe, troops on it now. You correct me on that. But go on, what's your read on this situation, or do you get any read at all?
In terms of what? In terms of Bibi's meeting? In terms of Iran? In terms
In
of what's
terms of
going to
the
happen
meeting, in
next?
terms of, is this all performative right now? We know Iran is not going to negotiate, and we know Israel, even if they did, is not going to be able to be okay with those negotiations. So those are two things that are sure. Okay, I just want to, for people that are not aware of this, I think this is extremely important. It's one of my favorite things. And guys, bear with me for 1 minute. I'm sorry, but I think it's an extremely incredible story, which was when Israel took out Iraq's nuclear facility in 1981. Right. So it was a nuclear facility built by Jacques Chirac for $200 million, a bunch of planes, a bunch of Porsches, and a bunch of cash. Sort of like the lawyers, guns, and money. They built it. They built this nuclear reactor when Menachem Begin did not want to. So this started happening in 79 under Carter and continued in 81. And Begin tried everything to do for them to not get this reactor, because everybody knew that Saddam Hussein, he said it, wanted to destroy Israel with 3 bombs. That was his plan, was 3 missiles to destroy Israel. So the first step of the plan was to use the Mossad to sort of kill everybody involved in all the nuclear scientists. And when they realized this would not stop, that's when he sent in the fighter planes. And that's a whole other story. And everybody on Reagan's cabinet, minus Haig and somebody else, wanted to condemn Israel for doing this, because this was out of nowhere. And that they did this. And it's an incredible story of how they did this. And Haig, and that's when Reagan famously said, boys will be boys. And he didn't listen to Bush and Baker and do punitive damages on Israel. But in 2001, Dick Cheney sent a letter to Israel thanking them for taking out the reactor, because it made it easier in 2001 when we went into Iraq. So I'm scared that this is one of those times again that Israel's going to have to do it solo.
So first of all, Israel also took out Syria's nuclear program in 2013, I think it was, after Assad went mad. The fact is, Israel is one of the few countries in the world not signed on to the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, because the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty hasn't been worth its salt. It's also the only country in the world that's actually enforced nuclear non-proliferation. The alternative example you have is North Korea, a tin-pot dictatorship who we tried to negotiate with. They said, yes, whatever you like, America. We will do anything you like. We'll be compliant, until they had nukes. And they said, by the way, we have nukes now, and now we're just going to mess with the system forever. And you can't do anything about it because we have nukes. And by the way, we're going to help the Iranians with their nuclear program. We're going to help the Pakistanis with their nuclear program. We're going to keep manufacturing more nuclear weapons because we don't care about the international order. And no one can do anything now because they've got between 50 and 100 nuclear weapons. And everybody's afraid of what happens if you bomb Pyongyang. We've seen the alternative. The alternative doesn't look like success. Israel's successful enforcement of nuclear non-proliferation is the only thing that has prevented lunatic tyrants with nuclear weapons and millenarian dreams from existing in the world. And now we're faced with the question, do we want another regime of lunatic tyrants with millenarian dreams or not?
Well, and it's important to understand where this came from, right? This was Menachem Begin made a decision that this is an act of self-defense. As Guy pointed out, we cannot allow these hostile states to acquire nuclear weapons. That was known as the Begin Doctrine, right? And so when that came down, it became something that was policy within Israeli government. Every time they saw that there was a hostile actor that was trying to acquire nuclear weapons or were working towards that, it was something they were going to stop in its tracks, not as we can call it whatever, preemptive strike, whatever you want to call it, ultimately a self-defensive move. And people don't think about this. Remember, everyone likes to talk about Iraq and Saddam Hussein, and we went in because nuclear weapons and they didn't have weapons of mass destruction, all of that. But here's the reason why they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. It's because they destroyed that reactor. And if they hadn't, if he'd had the entire thing up and running, Saddam would have had nuclear weapons and would have been able to use them, and surely would have used them. So the whole idea of it continues to make sense. And for the idea to continue to make more and more of these and put them in every corner of the globe is just leading to mutual self-destruction at the end of the day. The only way to quell it is the Begin Doctrine. By the way, I'll just point out that the UN and everybody else condemned Israel for it at the time.
Everybody behind the scenes was congratulating Israel, most of the countries in that region, I should say. And Guy, what's also important to note is that this was a 1-year mission that they were able to keep secret. That is an absolutely unheard of and incredible thing that they were able to keep secret, that they had 8 fighter jets ready to go and attack the 3. I mean, and it was just a brilliant plan. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's unthinkable and unheard of unless you're Israel, who have done 3 of those in the last 24 months. But I also think, just while we're on it, and because Begin's my people, he came from the same town as my grandmother. He actually studied under my great grandfather. But it's also important to understand that one of the things that shaped the Begin doctrine and Begin's worldview is Begin was a Polish Jew who went through the period before the Holocaust where someone said, "We're going to kill all the Jews." And then he survived the Holocaust. Very few people from his people did. Out of 3.5 million Polish Jews, 300,000 people survived. That's more than 90%. Begin understood that when people tell you that they're going to kill you, all of you, that they have genocidal intent towards your people, they can mean it. And left to politics and international convention and the rules-based order, that doesn't stop them. And so he created a proactive doctrine that said, we will not allow people who threaten us with genocide to have the ability to prove that they're willing to go through with it.
You know, Guy, go on. What Guy just brings up is a brilliant point. And again, you'll get the Americans that'll say, well, what does it have to do with us? Well, they've attempted at least 2 times to kill President Trump that we know of. They've attempted to kill journalists. They've attempted to kill who knows who else. So we know those things to be 100% true. So that's why it means something to us, a regime like the Ayatollah right now. And you have J.D. Vance that came out today and said, you know, I just wish he would not speak sometimes. And he came out and he said, you know, President Trump has no red lines in his negotiations. Well, President Trump did have red lines when it came to the slaughtering of 50,000 people. And I love that the Iranian finance minister is using Tucker Carlson talking points in invoking that Miriam Adelson is the one that is spreading the word of that Iran is going into hospitals, shooting people dead in the head. We know this from the ground, okay? We don't know this from Miriam Adelson. Sorry. And they are literally using the demented people that still have a modicum of influence within the White House, amazingly enough, as talking points go on.
He's the vice president.
The vice president. It's absolutely frightening.
It's so frightening, and it's so insane. And the fact that this is the kind of thing where I don't want to say he's negating what the president said, but they're clearly trying to shape this narrative. I mean, you know, there was an article today, I believe it was CNN, talking about how Trump basically told Bibi, he repeated that. I'm going to continue negotiating. I'm not doing anything more. And that wasn't what he had said prior. So clearly there are people within the White House, and it might be the vice president himself, who are getting in his ear and letting him know, stop talking about red lines. Stop talking about if you kill protesters, we're going to come in. Stop talking about what the things are that are going to trigger a response. At this point, just negotiate. And hey, if they want to do something, let them do it. We'll negotiate because all we cared about is nuclear proliferation. And it's that myopic view that actually is starting to hurt some of the credibility from within the White House, led by the VP.
So I actually want to go back to why Iran matters to America, because I think we don't talk about this enough, and then we'll come back to the White House. But the Iranian ballistic missile program, their ambition is not to invent more rockets that can hit Tel Aviv. They have 7 or 8 different varieties, and within those varieties, they have they have sequels. You know, they have the Jihad and the Fajr and the Fatah and every kind of name that you can associate with Middle Eastern terrorism. as a rocket already. The ambition of their program is intercontinental ballistic missiles with a range to hit North America. They were recently reported as being ready to test a rocket with a range of 10,000 kilometers.
Yeah, we talked about it on the show.
That's about 5,600 miles, which is less than the distance between Iran and the continental United States, right? It's not an indirect threat of a maybe. It's what they are trying to do, and they have said they're coming for you.
And to go back to your point about Begin, we can all talk about reactive policies, but when someone says they're coming for you, and they've made it clear, not just in verbal rhetoric, but as Judah pointed out, we're seeing picture upon picture of fake coffins draped in American flags all over the place, Israeli flags that people are stepping on, American flags that people are stepping on, effigies of Trump hanging and being burned. They're not hiding the ball in terms of what they want to do. And so when they're saying it over and over and over again, you can say, I don't think they can actually reach us, or I don't think they're serious about their 10,000 kilometer thing. Or you can preemptively strike, which by the time you're done with all the threats is still self-defense.
Right. And let's be straight up. None of us have any idea what's going on in Trump's head. I think there might be one or two people that know what Trump's plans are. We have no idea what the discussions actually were with BB today. Absolutely zero. And I give President Trump 100% benefit of the doubt. I think he has done, when you look at what's going on with Gaza, and when you look at Trump has totally allowed Israel to finish up jobs that they need to finish up right now and do as much dirty work as they have to do. So I'm not going to turn around and say I don't trust in Trump. I do 100% still. He has done nothing to let us down. And that's just my humble.
We also know that sometimes he puts statements out there or puts news stories out there. And he's doing it deliberately to lull people into a false sense of security or to steer them off the case. As somebody said to me in a call earlier today, every time I read an article that says someone close to the president says, later on you find out, oh no, the president said that. He's a smart guy when it comes to, as he said to a reporter who asked him stupid questions, why would I tell you that and have you print it so our enemies can read it? So there's a good reason why you are skeptical of some of the things he puts out there in a good way.
And by the way, Guy, just before you go, I just want to say, so Rand Paul today also came out and said the reason I brought Rand Paul's name up, first of all, I can't stand them. Never liked Rand Paul. I hate his policies. I think his father was a degenerate, and I hate libertarianism. I think, that's all I got to say about that. But the Rand Paul, there's a loss of public trust in ICE. And, so that's why I put the three of them there. They're all a bunch of degenerate jackasses. And it's amazing. They actually make Mitch McConnell look somewhat good. Okay. It's like if I had to choose between McConnell, Massie, and Paul, I'm going with McConnell. I'm going old school Rhino.
And the fact is, I mean, Rand Paul hasn't, I won't get into Rand Paul and his policies, but he's been on the wrong side of most issues for as long as he's been in politics. I will give him that he was on the right side when it came to the vaccine policies, not because he knew anything about the medicine, but because his understanding of the concept of freedom apparently was better than a lot of people's. If you are in the government and you think that the trust in ICE is degrading, your job is to get behind ICE and reinforce that trust, not to undermine it further, right? And I think that this is one of those things that because we have this constant campaign cycle, people are always worrying about their own politics, their own opinions. They are failing at what they've been hired to do. They've been hired by the people to do a job, and that job is to run a country. And part of running that country is to not undermine its critical infrastructure and the people that are trying to protect it. So sometimes if you're Rand Paul, you just need to shut up, which he never does.
Golan, since you went quiet all of a sudden, I figured you'd have a comment on that as I was looking at X to see if anything was breaking.
Well, I did. That's actually what I glanced over at. I saw a news story popped up here. 6 House Republicans defy Trump on key agenda item in Dem push to vote, but I didn't get a chance to read it yet. So I don't know if it's what we're talking about or something new, because it seems like this is happening more and more. But But yeah, no, I happen to agree with you. I think guys did it incredibly well. I don't have a lot to add. I think we all agree that Rand Paul is a useless individual that mistakes obstruction for bravery, and he kind of makes me sick. I think there was a very wise man who, when describing Paul, said "yuck," and I think that was brilliantly put, Judah.
And, the X that came out, by one of the posts by JD Vance guy was when asked about the regime change in Iran, he said, if the Iranian people want to overthrow the regime, that's up to the Iranian people. What we're
Yeah,
focused on right now is the fact that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And, listen,
Right.
take JD Vance out of the equation or whatever it is. I mean, it's an absolutely stupid freaking. If anybody said this to me, I would say you're a moron. I don't care who you are. I would say you're a moron. And you know what I would say? I have 47 years to prove that you're a moron. So the reason I bring this up is, talk about regime change. So yes, 500,000 people should get slaughtered. That's what we're talking about. A million people should get slaughtered. And if that's what he's okay with, that's what he's okay with. But this idea that we could negotiate, and I don't think from him he's playing the game Trump is playing. I truly believe this is what he thinks, that you can negotiate with these people. You're out of your mind and you're not fit to be president.
And I think we discussed this very early on in the war when we started talking about the American Revolution. Imagine had the French just said, if the Americans want freedom, they should fight for it themselves. We just want them to stop wasting perfectly good tea. It's an insane assertion that America shouldn't do the thing that America was born on a promise of doing. Let's say that we had cold feet. Those cold feet were relevant until the moment the president committed America to action. Now, if America backs down and says, oh, we just met the nuclear program. First of all, if America limits it to the nuclear program, Israel is going to attack. That's not a topic for debate. So this war happens either way if that's the case, because from Israel's perspective, the ballistic missile program is already an existential threat, as are the proxies, right? By the way, the Israeli public are very openly committed to helping to liberate the Iranian people, with whom there are so many different versions of dreams of a future of peace that the Israeli public have already said, if we have to take another battering of ballistic missiles in order that Iran is free, we accept that cost. Speaking as someone who has had the experience of having a suicide drone fly into a close neighbor's home, speaking as someone who's had the experience of being under fire from these ballistic missiles, that is not something you say lightly. It is terrifying, does not begin to express it. And saying we will accept that cost for the freedom of another people is no small cost. Israel cannot accept, it's not about will not accept Iran remaining an existential threat to it. In 10 years' time, Iran will be an existential threat to the United States without a regime change. I will write that check right now. It is not that complicated to make bigger rockets. I think Sacha Baron Cohen explained it pretty clearly in The Dictator, right? Make it pointier. Although it's not an if, it's only a question of when. And right now, the United States has the option to avoid having to understand what it feels like to have an explosive the size of a school bus fly into the buildings that you're living in at Mach 7.
But I want to also bring up something, Guy. You're 100% correct. So just for perspective, you saw this statement by Gutierrez today, the Secretary General of the United Nations, congratulating Iran on the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. And it's like we're living in different worlds. And this is, they're about, he keeps saying they're running out of money and they're about to go bankrupt. I pray to God they go bankrupt.
They've clearly been morally bankrupt for the better part of 50 years. Yeah, no, it's insane. I also read that they were elected today by the UN to the council, to the vice presidency of the Council on Social Development. The UN is such a farce at this point that they're continuing the show despite the fact that the curtain's open, as though the audience doesn't see who they are and what they are. I mean, the sooner that gets turned into a Trump Tower, the better off the entire world will be. And the fact that they're still playing this game while the entire world is on the verge of a catastrophic war, rather than going, hey, maybe we should, I don't know, shut up, solve a problem, censure the Ayatollahs for constantly antagonizing America, censure something, anything. No, we're going to promote we're going to promote Iran as some sort of liberating social. I don't even have words for it. It's insane.
I want to get back to this one last topic because it really is bothering me a lot, and it's we always say first the Jews, and now they really are coming after the Christians. And they really are trying to redefine Christianity. I'm talking about people in our own country. Redefine, Catholicism. I don't want to bring up the person's name, but the reason, it's like you have this person that was speaking at this council, obviously with talking points coming from Candace Owens about, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, and she will get platformed. And she will have she'll have, like you said, a person that belongs in a mental institution will end up having a podcast. And there is a real danger that's going on inside that people are trying to divide this country on. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and his ilk are doing is they're taking they're trying to break apart Christianity. They're trying to get this sort of populism movement running. And they're using theories from the left to craft this movement.
And you're right. I've got some very close friends that are very devout Christians in the United States that have been phenomenal supporters and allies throughout decades of conflict. And we've been watching Christianity come under fire in the West for 50 years. In the last 30, we've been watching churches burn down all over the world. In the last 10 years, we've seen movements attacking evangelical Christians' fundamental beliefs, trying to undermine it, trying to pull people away in a Sabbatean way. The attack on Christianity is absolutely intentional. It is a continuation of the attack on Jews. It's the same thing, because the reason we call our society founded in Judeo-Christian values is because those are the things that hold it together. Judeo-Christian values, the nuclear family, and the Constitution. They've taken down the nuclear family. They've come for the Jews. They're coming for the Christians, and they never accepted the Constitution. Right? They cannot do this without going after Christianity. And the sad thing is, some of the people that are falling for this are genuinely good people of faith who are being misguided by charlatans, right? And that's a warning that a very close friend of mine who's very spiritual says that, look, the warning that the warning has always been that the Antichrist will not come in the form of someone with horns and hoofs, right? The devil always wears a smile and coats himself in charm. And from my perspective, one of the great missions that I've sort of embraced over the past couple of years is really trying to help the Christians learn some of what the Jews have not had to learn over our last couple of thousand years, because Christians are becoming a persecuted minority in the world. And I don't think that they know, I don't think that they're ready for that. And I don't think that they understand that because they're a majority in some countries that are not a majority of the world, that's not going to protect them unless they protect themselves.
Listen, I think that was perfectly and brilliantly said. And this is a message I'm not going to stop talking about. This is something I believe heavily in. And again, we need to be actionary and not reactionary. And there needs to be something done about this. There needs to be alliances put together, not think tanks, but there needs to be action tanks. I'm tired of everything being a reaction. The left and these groypers and groupers and grifters and charlatans are 10 steps ahead of us right now. And they know it. And we're like facing a real battle.
They have revolutionary playbooks that have been built up over 50 years. We have morals and ideals that we no longer know how to use, right? We stopped teaching kids the Bible in school. I don't care if it's the Jewish Bible or the Christian Bible, the New Testament, the Old Testament. Those books, that education taught people to have a grounding in values that these grifters wouldn't be able to tear down. The fact that we've become ignorant of the values that made our societies great is the reason that they're so easily undermined. And I think that one of the things that we need to start understanding is we don't have to be religious in order to understand the contribution that Judaism and Christianity have made to the society we live in. And we do need to understand that we are not Wile E. Coyote. If we saw off the branch that we're on, we don't even get the airtime until we realize that it's going to fall off. We cannot keep trying to soar off the branch that we're sitting on, that our societies are built on, and that without it, the abyss is not a place you want to be.
We have to really start being actionary, not reactionary. They're 10 steps ahead of us, as he brought up. They're using the militant playbook. And that's why sometimes would get upset when we were in chat groups, or I get upset with the performative pins or letters or this or that. These people don't care about pins or letters. They're on to their next mission. Right now, you got this jackass Mark Ruffalo, wanting the Cubans to be enslaved for the next 50 years, and still getting paid and still being an actor.
And it's amazing because the only people who disagree with them are all the Cubans, for God's sake. I think in any asymmetric fight, whether it's against America haters or Jew haters or Israel haters or the West haters or whatever you want to call it, reaction is surrender dressed up as civility, right? If we're waiting until they do something for us to figure out, okay, how do we combat that? As we've talked about before, Judah, they're already on to the next lie. They're already on to the next grift. They're already on to the next thing that the next weapon they're going to use against it. So every time something like this spikes, every time that America is framed as the villain of history, every time that Israel is demonized or whatever it happens to be, as you mentioned, we write a letter, we issue a statement, we condemn it, we go online, we give long explanations as to why it's actually wrong, even though they had one cool rhyming sentence which did its work, and now we've got a 10-minute video that no one's going to watch that's going to fact check it. It doesn't work. That's not defense. That's simply delay. That's treading water. And the thing that we have to remember, I was in the army, and it's something that we were taught. If you are fighting an enemy that isn't waiting for provocation, right? They are attacking without provocation. This isn't a fair fight where, okay, we're going to wait for them to do something and then we retaliate and then we try and, make sure that we're even. They're setting these narratives first. They're flooding the zone, and they're flooding it with poison, and they're using these institutions they've captured. They've used these politicians they've captured, the podcasters, the media, whatever it is, and then they dare you to respond, knowing that by the time you do, you're playing by their rules. So this is something that we absolutely have to stop doing. We can't always be behind the eight ball.
And Guy, we have to wrap it up. But the thing is, if you know what's coming down the pike, it should not be that difficult to get your messaging together. And this is my biggest issue: is we know what's coming down the pike as far as Christianity, as far as Judaism, as far as ICE, as far as the total breakdown and chaos of society. This is the George Soros, militant handbook of communism, of every ism that's destroyed the world. So I'm tired of playing defense. We have to start playing offense. And this is something we haven't been good at. Trump is a great offensive player, but you can't play offense alone. So great for Mike Johnson today for doing a miracle, which is getting 216 Republicans to vote. Great on Trump and Besant for building the economy and job growth being double that it was expected. So great stuff on that, but we got to bang that out. We got to get that messaging out because we know it's coming. And this is what drives me crazy. If you know what the ad is going to be, have the ad to counter it before they could even launch it. Final word.
And I think as a final word, I just want to say that we are a bunch of Jews talking a lot about Christianity and the things facing Christianity. And that's because there's a certain responsibility we have now to pay back what the support and protection we've been given. For decades, evangelical Christians have done wonders to support Jews and the state of Israel and religious freedom. We're not the canaries in the coal mine. That's a bad analogy. We're the scouts that were sent to Canaan before everyone else, right? We've come back. We know what's there. And it's our job now to take the lessons that we've learned from the experience we've had over the past millennia, but also specifically over the past couple of decades and the past couple of years, and to help Christians, Americans, and the people who have supported us come up with a playbook to protect their civilizations from this, because it's not going to end with delegitimizing our civilization. That was never the playbook. When the playbook was written, Israel didn't exist and they were already trying to delegitimize the West. This is coming for America, and it's our job to take responsibility and to try to help. And that's why we talk about these things. It's not because it's not because we're outsiders talking in. It's because we've been there and we want to help.
And that was one heck of a short last word.
And I will say, I call it civilizational sabotage. right? And we are watching this coordinated assault. Guy and I were talking about this offline just the other day, right? That the reason why they're focusing on Christianity is because not because they're engaging with it honestly and saying, let's review what the text said and then we'll reinterpret in a different way. They're hollowing it out. They're twisting it into something it's not. And they're using that grotesque, like twisted caricature that they are crafting whole cloth, frankly, to portray the Christians as the villains in their own moral story. If you follow the tenets of Christianity, think about Tucker Carlson, a Christian Zionist. Well, I hate them more than anybody, but those things go hand in hand. So the minute you start to cut away at it and you're saying, I'm going to take Christianity's emphasis on humility and turn it into submission to an ideology, you're basically allowing them to hollow out Christianity, which means hollowing out the West. It's deliberate inversion.
Gentlemen, well done. And I want to thank both of you. A fantastic show. I think, yeah, it was a good show. I enjoy listening to both of you. I get a lot out of what both of you have to share, both of your assessments of the situations. They are extremely well thought out. It doesn't mean everybody's going to have to agree with you or everybody will agree with you. They're just well thought out opinions that I wish more people would do. It's a lost art of thinking out your opinion. What a novel idea. I want to thank everybody that's following us and everybody that's been listening to us. And don't forget to give us those 5-star reviews. It's very helpful. You can find us everywhere. Mostly you can find us at thedailycheatsheet.com. That's thedailycheatsheet.com. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.